regular meeting of the Brookfield Board of Education to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have all 7 of our board members here tonight, as well as members of our administrative staff. Oh, I'm sorry. Obviously, that's why I'm here, saying these words. So Wendy's not here, but our first item after this roll call is public comment. We only have one signed up, so Mr. Maresh, you are welcome to take the podium. Three minutes, and just state that you're a Brookfield resident. I have your address for the record.
Mark Morash, 25 Mist Hill Drive, Brookfield, Connecticut. I have something written, and I'm going to get to it, but I want to preface it by the fact that I just walked over to Mr. Belanda and talked about what I have in here. And it was lovely to be able to talk and communicate and have a back and forth about this issue that I spoke about on the 8th, and I'm going to speak about again tonight because I think it's important to have it on the record. But what just happened there is exactly what should be going on with boards and commissions and everybody talking, and I just want to thank him. And while this is going to come across as being irked, because I am irked, I want you all to know that progress is already being made, and I'll hope that you make the second part of the progress. So on October 8th, I spoke about the pending policy about renting the auditorium in the high school. And then I went on the 9th to the policy meeting and spoke about it again. And I heard from board member Sikora that she had spoken with someone who said that the reason that the kids couldn't use the sound system in the auditorium was because it was prepped for the musical Chicago that they were putting on. She didn't say who it was, and the fact is, it's an absolute lie. And I typed it into the chat, and then I was chastised for typing into the chat and was told that the chat shouldn't have been available to me. And I had no recourse to something that is provably false. And I want to know who lied to a board member, because as a member of the Board of Education, when you go to a teacher or an administrator and ask a question, you're expecting a truthful response. So the fact of the matter is that the musical Chicago was done in March of this year. And the kids from the Park and Rec went in to do their show in April. The board wasn't set up for Chicago. And so I'm asking you tonight to tell us who lied to a member of the Board of Education, because after that moment, you said that you weren't going to change the policy. In fact, tonight, that policy is here to be voted on and cleared. And there is nothing in there that protects the kids from somebody's ego or some sort of vengeance, from preventing kids who are doing a musical in a room from using something you would think would be expected to be used, which is a sound system. So I'm begging you to hold document 1300 and just add a little bit of language, because right now the language is, it's decided on by the principal or a responsible administrator. There's no definition of what a responsible administrator is, and that could be the person who decided they were going to lie about it. So I'm asking you once more, who is the person who lied to the Board of Education and is affecting policy with that lie? Thank you.
Thank you. Written correspondence.
The following people have emailed the Board of Ed since October 8th. Carrie Colombo, Justine Nziro, and Irene Correa. I also wanted to say that as a reminder, we have put several questions out about the district calendar for next year, so we're hoping to receive more correspondence from the public. There were some questions listed in the 3 main points, asking for feedback specifically about starting before Labor Day, before or after Labor Day, the different holidays, number of days, snow days, things like that. This is a tangible opportunity for both parents and students to have a say in what our school year might look like in the future. We'll compile all those correspondence and review them before the November meeting.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, moving on to approval of board minutes.
I move that the board approve the minutes listed below as recommended. Regular meeting 10/8/25.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. Any questions, edits, comments on the minutes? Okay, seeing none, let's proceed to vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that's That's unanimous. Thank you. And on to the superintendent's update.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thank you. So my report is going to be just a little bit segmented because I prepared just a few brief comments to add through the chair, if permissible, before each of the smaller presentations later on. So I'll start just briefly. Our enrollment hovers right under 2,500, and that's a good number. It's down about 37 children, and there will be an enrollment report provided a little bit later on this evening. It's about down 37 students from last year at this time. October 1st, this is our benchmark number. So the 2,494, that's the number that we will use for all state reporting. That's consistent across the state. So, last week I spent much of Wednesday in the buildings, and I saw some really great things. So I saw the new MIDI lab actually creating some rock music, and the kids were really excited. I watched some collaborative problem solving in chemistry, and it brought back some memories. Not all positive, but they were doing great. They were exploring in one of the schools, they were exploring AI and a hands-on project application that the teachers had worked really hard on. Fifth graders were working on a historical newspaper article regarding, I believe, the Freedom Trail. And so there's two things I noticed that I wanted to share with the board. One is that I noticed that in the classrooms that we visited, there were very high expectations for the learners. In fact, I was sharing with one board member earlier, there was something on the wall that I took a picture of. It had to do with engineering, and I sent it to my two children who are engineers themselves, and my daughter wrote back, well, if they're asking that in the elementary school, they can have my job now. And so I just thought that was impressive, that there really are hard things, critical thinking things, explaining your thinking, opportunities being designed by our teachers, and that is something of which we should be proud. And I also want to point out that in order to make these things happen, it requires common planning time for teachers to have together with their colleagues. And that collaboration is important, and our administrators work hard to make sure that that time exists. I was over at CLS this morning with Deb, and we saw the CLES floor. It is beautiful and finished. And the PE teachers, looked very happy to be bringing their things back in. And just two small pieces. One is that we are continuing at the administrative level a discussion, which I believe was started a while back, about one-to-one device next steps. And so you will continue to hear more about that. And it is really an opportunity for us to really look at all of the pros and cons of having all learners use district devices during the school day. There are pros, there are cons. We will talk about it with you. It's being explored in a lot of other districts as well. And so we reviewed a lot of the advantages and disadvantages. And you will hear more about that because it does have some budgetary implication. We do have devices, but it might impact the budget a little bit more. So more to come on that. And then I just want to end with, yesterday was beautiful, and Debbie and Bill, who's not here this evening, and I, and Dean, and there may have been other people there. We were over at the high school for the CIAC Wisconir/middle school unified sports, kind of like a regional tournament of sorts for soccer. It was amazing. So there's great things happening in Brookfield. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? All right. Moving on then to the superintendent search update, and we have Rena and Roy from school leadership joining us via Zoom.
Can you hear us by any chance?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I just want to be sure that you can hear us both.
Yes.
Great. Okay, so good evening, everybody. I want to start off, I'm Rena Beater, and I'm joined by Dr. Roy Montesano from School Leadership. We are going to report on our time in district, which we greatly enjoyed. We had many good conversations with people. Individuals were extremely generous with their time, and we really appreciate the work of the hiring committee and Lisa Brownlee with their warm greeting and how they got this all organized and identified groups and individuals for us to speak with. So thank you all for that. So Roy and I were in the district on September 17th, 8th, and 18th and conducted national forums virtually and meetings with individuals on 2 additional dates. This is a list of the groups and participants that we met with, a sample listing of everybody that we spoke with. You can see we had 44 participants in all the forums and focus groups and 177 responses to the survey. And we identified some consistent themes based on responses to these questions, which you can see up here on the screen. And each group and each individual was asked each of these 3 questions. We heard a lot of focus on bullet 2. I loved how Vonda started off your meeting talking about all the wonderful things she saw in the classrooms. We consistently heard about the wonderful staff and students that you have in your district, the dedication of your teachers came through time and time again, as well as the support of town government and the partnership that you have with the town government, as well as your community organizations such as the Brookfield Ed Foundation and the Booster Club. So there's widespread community support for the school. It's an engaged community that cares deeply about the schools, and many individuals look to Brookfield for the quality of their school, for the quality of your schools. So let's go through. Roy, do you want to go through some of the the data from the survey?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Again, reiterating what Rita said, we want to thank you for inviting us into the district. We had a great experience. People are very positive and honest and open when they were talking with us and gave us a lot of information that's going to be very useful as we go on our search and as it translated the specifications that we'd be looking for in the next leader. So it was a good time for us to be there, and we appreciate the openness and the welcome environment that we received. So in the first question, we asked people survey question, we asked people to pick the 2 prior experiences that they felt were most important or most critical for the next superintendent. And we were somewhat surprised and somewhat unique to Brookfield that classroom teaching experience came through by more than 50% of the people, not only in the survey, but we heard it continuously in the focus groups as well, that people felt that was really important for the next superintendent, so they can understand, perhaps they're in touch with the classroom experience, in touch with what teachers go through, can use that experience to help support them in their work. So people felt that was extremely important. The other area was not as well, one second, Rick. The other experience was not quite as well defined. We certainly, leader in improving an already high-performing district was important, and other experiences as an administrator, particularly in building level and central office level, not necessarily as a prior superintendent. And we did hear that theme throughout. Okay. The next slide was in response to the second question, where we asked people, we gave a list of skills. We asked people to check the boxes besides the 3 that they felt were most critical for the next superintendent. And you can see that where the boxes are around, those were the top 3 choices in the survey: curriculum, instructional knowledge, and leadership, including current research and best practices, knowledge of budgeting, finance, and facility planning, and collaborative and successful at building highly productive teams. And in my opinion, and in our opinion, during our visit, that last one, even though it was barely third, I think that one is such a key ingredient for the next superintendent coming in, because you have some terrific staff members there, and you have a good administrative staff as well. And it seems they're searching for that leadership. They're searching for somebody that can help bring them all together and share a common vision and move the district forward. So that was nice to see as well. And the last one, just, you know, in terms of who completed the survey, you can see the responses there. We had a lot of people who are residents in the district with children currently in school. We had 34 members of the teaching staff and 28 residents of the district who did not have children currently in the district. So a pretty nice cross spread of people who completed the survey. Of course, we'd love to have more responses, but it was nice to see a large group of parents who care about the district, care about the education their children are receiving, respond and give us their opinion.
So based on both of what we heard in our focus groups and interviews with individuals and on the information that we obtained in the survey, we came up with the following specifications. Now, these specifications guide the search. They are, tonight I believe, are going to be, we're going to get feedback from the board, and they are also going to be included within the advertisement that are going to be posted for the position. So I'm just going to take the time and read these out loud. So an experienced, visionary, student-centered educational leader with a strong record of enhancing curriculum, instruction, and student achievement, grounded in significant classroom experience, and a commitment to fostering student well-being and addressing the diverse needs of all learners. A compassionate, thoughtful, visible, and supportive advocate for students and staff who actively promotes the mission of Brookfield Public Schools and holds self and others accountable. And a collaborative, energetic, and strategic team builder who fosters strong relationships, mentors and develops staff, understands and strengthens board governance, and unites the school community around a shared vision that supports a culture of trust, transparency, innovation, and excellence. Oops, keep on.
Okay, and I'll just continue reading the specs on this slide. A clear, proactive, and effective communicator who listens and engages across multiple platforms, explains decisions openly and transparently, builds understanding among stakeholders, and approaches difficult conversations with fairness, empathy, and respect. A skilled and adaptive financial and operational manager with expertise in budget development, resource allocation, and long-range planning, capable of addressing enrollment shifts, facility needs, and staffing priorities while maximizing available resources. And finally, a courageous, ethical, and approachable leader who is excited to become an integral member of the Brookfield community and is dedicated to leading the district toward sustained growth and continued excellence. You're muted, Rena.
I'm muted, thank you.
Yeah.
So our next steps. So the search will officially launch, meaning we'll be sending in advertisements on October 23rd. So October 23rd, 24th, applications will be open. We are continuing with our recruiting. We're going to be advertising as well as there's a letter that is sent out to many organizations, superintendent organizations, education organizations, with information about the district. The applications will close on November 20th. We could always decide, the search committee together with us could always decide based on the candidate pool that we've received to leave the application, to extend the application deadline. So that's an option. But the interview currently will start around the first week in December, continue in December, and the goal is for the board to appoint a superintendent sometime around the end of December, beginning of January, given where the holidays fall. So are there any questions?
don't think we have any questions. So as you heard Rena mention, the search will officially kick off tomorrow, October 23rd, but that is pending a very key motion that we have to approve tonight. So if you don't have any other questions for Rena or Roy, we can let you guys go. Thank you for joining us. And then Stephanie, I believe you have a motion for us.
I move that the board approve the specifications as outlined in the specification report as presented by school leadership, and I further move that the board authorize school leadership to use these specifications in advertising for the position.
Second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. We as a search committee have already approved these specifications, so now we as a board have to actually approve this to set it in motion. So is there any other comments or questions on it? All right, then let's vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. There's no nays, that's unanimous, so thank you. You can go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
All of you, and a big thank you to the community for participating in this process.
Thank you, guys.
We'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye. All right, on to subcommittee reports. First up is CAPE.
Okay. So we met on October 8th. And we had, I'm not going to go into detail because we're going to be getting a presentation from Deb regarding the state assessment achievement presentation. The only other thing I'll add is we had a public comment. A parent had shared her concerns and asked about the rationale as to why students in middle school who take high school Algebra 1 and or world language in 8th grade are not awarded high school credit. Because we adopted a Board of Ed policy in 2023, and the Connecticut State Board of Education allows for this, and many neighboring districts award this as well. So I asked for a comeback for Deb to get some clarifying information to come back with so that we can, talk about it and discuss it and get back to the parent regarding that. So we'll receive later in the agenda the presentation. Okay, that's it.
Thank you. Policy and communications.
Okay. During our meeting, Mrs. Tenza gave guidance to the committee about policy initiatives and best practice. As we all know, the Board of Education is a policy-making body, so there's a few important points for us all to remember as we move forward. First, the policy committee should not include regulations with policy approval. This falls under the purview of the administration. Policy defines what is to be done, while regulations dictate how it is to be done, and the board's sole responsibility lies in establishing the policy. It's the responsibility of the superintendent and the building administration to determine the regulations. So there are two policies that are on for a final read tonight that originally had a regulation attached to them. Those have been removed for a final read, so only the policy is on the agenda or in your packet tonight. Those regulations will be reviewed by the administration and the superintendent and implemented as they see fit. It's also crucial to remember that legal statutes always supersede policy. So if there are legally required policies that we do not yet have in place, there are laws in place to guide the district until such a time that those policies can be sufficiently updated. Policies should address specific challenges that are pertinent to our district. And so as you know, the policy committee has been going through and trying to update and clean up some outdated policies that we don't necessarily apply anymore, policies that the Shipman and Goodwin policies are sort of enveloping. And it's also important to remember that altering the wording of a legally mandated and required policy given to us by the attorneys at Shipman and Goodwin is ill-advised and not recommended. Required policies should be adopted as written by the attorneys with the exception of personalizing it to the district. But it's important to remember that changing words can also change the intention and the meaning of the policy and negate its legal requirement. So this is another important reason why all of the policies should always go through the superintendent. As we move forward, things are going to look a little bit different because we talked to Mrs. Tenza about kind of establishing a different process. The last few months, the committee has focused on updating policies that can help the administration create a district-wide handbook. So with the support of Mrs. Diat, we have been working at a breakneck pace, But we need to start relying more on the superintendent's review of each policy so that we're not bogged down so much by trying to review everything and getting feedback from the board. Going forward, the superintendent's office will review the policies and then run them through the administration to either redline or recommend how the committee should proceed. And then the committee will put it forward for a first read at the Board of Ed meeting, and that is where most of the conversation about feedback, where it should take place. So that then we all as a committee can go back to the next policy meeting, review the feedback, and bring it back to the board at the next meeting for a final read and adoption. There shouldn't be quite so much back and forth within the committee. A lot of what we are doing should already have been done at the superintendent and admin level, and so we're going to move towards that as we move forward. The committee's priority will now shift to mandated policies that we are lacking. I'll get with Mrs. Tenza to go through those before our next policy meeting, so you'll see those as well as the outstanding policies that we didn't include tonight that we've already been have already been on the agenda for a first read. Tonight we have several policies on for a final read. These have all been on various agendas for a first read over the last few months. They've been reviewed extensively, and there have been no questions or concerns by any board members. There were 3 policies that need more review and discussion and that we want to leave with the superintendent's office. That's the chemical health for student athletes, the food allergies policy, and the student discipline policy. So you will not see those on the consent agenda tonight. And then just as an FYI, there has been a small addition to the fee schedule for policy 1330, the use of school facilities. The business office has added an asterisk to the fee schedule stating that fees are at the discretion of the superintendent. That was added so that if there is a for-profit program that is for the students and charging them per hour for the facilities will mean that it's not affordable for them to run the program, they can talk to the superintendent and work something out on how to proceed, and that would go through the business office as well.
Okay,
There you go.
thank you. That was a lot of information.
It was.
Good.
We had a really good,
Really
productive
good.
meeting, so.
Any
go.
questions for Stephanie?
So was that added? It's highlighted? That's
Yeah, the
what we
highlighted is what Casey and Vonda decided should be included, so that programs that are, so we don't outprice programs that are run for
Can you
students.
give an example or something, like an example of?
So, a group that may be renting space at one of the schools every day to provide, a before-school,
Oh, okay.
Activity or programming for students.
Okay.
It serves our students on
Sure.
a daily basis. These rates are all charged hourly. So if you were to charge,
They're just gonna pass it through to.
Yes.
yeah,
exactly.
or it just wouldn't be feasible
Right.
to
Yeah,
do
yeah,
that.
They would not run
but,
the program.
and that's why it's really important that it is, assessed on a case. They may be adjusted on a case-by-case basis. It says, at the discretion of the superintendent or his or
Yeah.
her designee, so that we can really assess everything.
Right.
So.
Okay, thank you. All right, and the last report is from finance, so I'll give that. We last met on the 9th, and big takeaway, we have a few areas of the budget that Casey is watching most closely. It's still obviously very early in the year to try to forecast something, several months away still. There are some areas of savings, some areas of budget exposures, so of course we're gonna keep watching that. Our out-of-district special education, as you know, is being tracked sort of in a separate bucket, so we kind of continuously take a look at that month-to-month snapshot every month, which is really helpful. And the purpose of doing that, tracking it in that, sort of separate little snapshot, is just being completely transparent about the fluctuations within these accounts, and sometimes they can get confusing when mixed in with the rest of our budget. And then we briefly discussed food services, how the new breakfast program is rolling out, and the upcoming very comprehensive administrative review that'll be conducted by state inspectors of all of our food service programs. And that will be a very large undertaking, but that is it.
Can I provide one update on the breakfast program?
Yeah.
So I think at the time of our meeting, it had not rolled out yet at CLES. We are now in the second week, I believe, second week of breakfast, and we're serving anywhere from 100 to 120 breakfasts at CLES every
Wow.
morning. So,
That is great.
with a couple little tweaks we still have to work out with timing of some of the later buses, making sure that kids have enough time to at least sit, have a few bites before they, but they are graciously allowing them to take, breakfast to their classroom to eat. So if they need a breakfast, they are getting it. But yeah, the turnout there is about 10% of the school, so.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's
Cool. All right. Now on to our student representative report. So Emily, take it away.
All right, so this past week we had one of our most successful homecoming weeks. The pep rally, homecoming carnival, and dance were a culmination of weeks work by our student government executive board. While they were supported by their advisor and the BHS administrative team, the entire week was organized, planned, and facilitated by our student leaders. They did such a good job. Like the pep rally, the spirit week, it was great. They did awesome. The homecoming carnival was sponsored by student government, and 8 clubs participated, running booths and activities for all the Brookfield students. I was there, and it was an amazing turnout. I've heard the past year like the turnout wasn't great, but the weather was perfect. It was a little chilly, but it was great. And there were so many kids. It was a lot of fun. The booths had everyone be active. Kids won prizes. It was so cool. Our homecoming dance was one of the most successful in many years. We had close to 500 students attend, and a large number of kids stayed until the end. I stayed until the end as well. We had a pizza truck and an Ben and Jerry's truck, which were great. They were awesome. And as well as snacks and drinks provided by the community donations and student government, so thank you for those who donated. And upcoming events, we have a Halloween costume spirit day, Friday the October 31st, and a Veterans Day activities Tuesday, November 11th, and ILT Gingerbread House activity, early December. I don't think we have a set date for that, but I'm excited, so that's all. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Any questions?
No, I just wanted to remind you that we are putting the calendar on the November agenda, and we would love to have the student feedback at that point. So, just wondering if you had been able to organize that. Like, how are you going through the student council? Like, how are you collecting feedback from the students?
So I
Just out of curiosity.
made a Google form, and I'm planning to meet with Mr. Belanda this Friday actually, just to discuss it and then hopefully get it out in the following weeks during.
No, I think a Google form.
Yeah. So I could send it to you guys if you guys want to just look at it and see what it's about. But
No. I was just curious, like, what were you gonna, like, how
oh yeah, and I also want to talk with Maria, who's the student government leader. So yeah, she's good.
Awesome.
Of course.
Thank you. All right. On to the consent agenda.
I move that the board approve the items on the consent agenda as recommended. New hires, resignations, policies for a final read, September financials.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions, comments on this?
I did want to point out, we all got an email from Lisa, but it was 1330 was the policy, right? We had redlined or crossed out something, striked through something, and didn't actually put the actual positions. It was who's responsible for, and so that has been corrected in the version that we're approving tonight.
The only question I have is, through public comment, 1300, if there's rental equipment, like how does that work currently? The sound system, like.
I think it is described. Sorry.
Is it Drew? I'm thinking A, application procedures. The applications for these facilities shall be submitted to the school building secretary in accordance with administrative regulations. Groups requesting use of school buildings and facilities must identify the specific facilities desired.
It's
That
on the
section?
actual building use form, right? That was what we had looked at the meeting.
Yeah, so there's an
Yeah.
there's an application form, and they have to fill out
Yeah.
what type of equipment that they are requesting, and then it has all different approvals at the building level, custodial level, all that stuff.
So I know when we talked in policy, we weren't sure if the sound system is able to be used for the public. So I'm looking for clarification there.
I was just told it's at the discretion of the building administrators. That was the feedback that we got. Depending on what's going on, who's requesting it. I don't know exactly what the.
Yeah, I don't know that has ever been addressed in the policy. I can get more information on that if that's going to be a hang up. I can certainly get more information on that. The sound system in the auditorium.
I just want to know that if the community wants to put on a play, that we're making it readily available, if we can.
We can look into that.
Yeah, so
Get
these,
that
so
answer.
these items here are on the consent agenda, they're not actual, separate agenda items. And, oh, I'm sorry. So being that they're on the consent agenda and not as separate regular items, we shouldn't be spending too much time discussing them. These, I understand, have gone through the policy committee, they have appeared on our board agendas prior. There were no questions or comments or edits on that.
The questions and comments we had talked about through
At
at
the
the
policy
meeting.
committee.
We
At the
talked
policy
about
meeting.
them at the policy meeting with no no answers to the question. So I think that it's, it's imperative that we know that.
So,
it-
so does the board want to pull that policy out of this consent agenda?
I think I'm satisfied with the answer that it's at the discretion of the building administrator, so I don't.
Yeah,
find
I'm
any-
comfortable with that, as long as, I think that we do right by the public, right, to address it at another time, or a follow-up.
Okay. All right, so then, I think we will move forward with, the motion that is on the table for the consent agenda. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Joy, you were aye?
Yeah.
Sorry, I was like whipping my head around.
Oh,
And
I
nay?
didn't even, no, I'm aye.
Okay, you're aye, Sarah? Okay, so then that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, on to new business, the district enrollment report.
That would be me. This is a standard report given in almost every district every year, October 1st data. So it's pretty straightforward. We certainly could go back if you needed it. You can see the past few years have been tabulated here. I believe it's Lisa very nicely compared to show the ups and downs. I had said overall, we are 37 pupils less than we were the year prior, although, it is good to note that our enrollment is fairly consistent around 2,500 over the last several years. It's good to see that it's not dipping in the way that it is in some districts, and also that it's not sharply escalating. It's always great to have more students coming to us, but you have to have the space to put them. So, we just like to be able to look at those numbers. And it also shows our special education population on campus and off, as well as our multi-language learners and our free and reduced lunch. So, the one thing that I would want to highlight to you as the superintendent is that these numbers are beginning to show a nice, robust diversity for our population, which I think is a wonderful thing. And it's important for us to think about what does that do for our learners in terms of offering rich collaboration opportunities. It also does impact our teaching and learning, and it might also impact our budget when you look at the special education has held fairly consistent around 350, so that's pretty nice to see that consistency. The multi-language learners from 2022 to now have increased from 98 to 128. That's a good jump, and that does have impact on teaching and learning and staffing. And our free and reduced have increased almost 100 as well, from 563 to 643. So those numbers do have faces to them every day with our children. So that's our enrollment report. It's a nice report, good numbers. Overall, very happy to see it.
Okay. Any, questions? for the board members? Okay. Well, then we will move on to the class size report.
This is the nitty-gritty.
All right, so the class size report, you will have that. The purpose of it is really to help inform our budget planning, right? So the total enrollments you can see for each of the schools and each of the sections. In terms of class sizes and relative to the guidelines, grade
Is your
3.
mic on?
Oh, I pressed it. Yeah. Grade, thank you. Grade 3 has 7 sections that are above the class size guidelines, with where the maximum range of 22, because the largest class sizes are 23. So of those 7 sections, most of them are up by over the guideline that we have set by 1 student. At Wisconsin, in terms of sections that are above class guidelines, are really the UNAHs. You've got really one section in art, 2 sections in tech ed, and then there are 4 sections in phys ed. At Brookfield High School, you've got a couple of sections that are over the class size guidelines, just 1 section of English, 2 sections of math, 6 sections of world language. The largest section has 27 students, and the class size guidelines for Brookfield High School is 26, so again, by 1 student. And then business classes, we have 7 sections that are exceeding the guidelines, which the largest section has 31. So that's, those classes are certainly over the 26 students, because the largest section has 31. And then music, health, and PE, those special classes as well, with PE exceeding by 4 sections, health 1 section, and music 3 sections. So I think for the most part, we're doing a pretty good job at maintaining our class size guidelines that you all worked hard to work in updating last year. So, thank you.
Deb, do we know if that, for the world language, that one class has 27, is that French or Spanish? Do you know?
It's high school,
That's high school.
yeah. Okay.
It shouldn't be French, because we did that point too.
Yeah, well, I was making sure, because we did the point too.
Yeah. Okay.
Deb, I have a question about the business. Is that,
Yes.
is the reason why they're all over because the demand for the class, or because of the way requirements are?
Yeah, we'll have to, we'll get back to you
Yeah.
on that.
Thanks.
No problem. My pleasure.
For graduation.
Hmm?
It's probably the requirement.
So I'll probably, I think most of the questions that I would have would probably be under item F, under budget assumptions, to see if we'll see anything reflected, so I'll
Mhm.
save any of my questions for then. But, any other questions on class size report? Okay.
Okay.
So then we'll move on to the student achievement report. Another very
So
hefty
This will be
report.
Deb, and while she's getting set, I just had a few words to say while she's getting set. That way it's an effective use of everybody's time. So we just wanted to share collectively, Deb and I work hand in hand, that there are many ways to measure growth and achievement. So tonight, this focuses just on standardized assessments that are issued from the state and national level. We are, proud to share our scores. It was shared with the CAPE committee a few weeks ago, and the committee members, Joyce, Sarah, and Wendy, who's not here, they had the opportunity to review this information, and they asked some questions which kind of helped us, kind of like tailor some of our thinking. These data points don't measure a lot of the other aspects of a Brookfield learner, right? So we have many children that may not be successful on a standardized assessment who are extremely successful in the arts, the music, the athletic field, a club, student leadership. So, we're very proud, and that's where the companion of that whole, portrait of a learner comes into play. They hand in hand go together to create a school community and a system of learners. So we do have, and again, that whole enrollment report supported it, a nice, diverse learning community, and we should be proud. And so what Deb's gonna share with you is that we do have some great areas to celebrate, and you will see we have some areas in which to grow. And we put them on here because we have to look at the good and the bad and face it and figure out where we need to go from there. This is district level, so it's important for you to realize that at the building level and at the teacher level, teachers have access to different layers of this companion data, and they look at it, and their important role is to make instructional decisions and curricular decisions based on what they're seeing. So this is the broad district level. It doesn't go down to those granular levels, but rest assured, I've even already heard them talking about the nitty-gritty. So thank you.
Thank you for that introduction, Rhonda. Alrighty, so I have the awesome privilege of presenting to you tonight a snapshot of really our state assessment achievement and growth data from last year. And I say a snapshot because, as Rhonda shared, this is really one data point in time for students. So first I want to start off with who are our learners, put some faces behind it. Some of the numbers, actually, I took this from the October snapshot before it was finalized, so there's a couple of students that are, there's a couple of numbers that are not totally there, but it's for the most part right on. So you'll notice here, this is really a source of data, which is demographic data, right? That's another type of data. And this snapshot shows you really the faces behind our BPS learning community. So we have 15% of our student population with IEPs. We have 10% of our student population with a 504. 26% of our population with students eligible for free and reduced lunch. And we've got 5% of our students who are multilingual learners. So you can see, as Vonda had shared, we are very fortunate to have a lot of diversity in our learning community. So this brings just some context to our data. And it's important to know, right, who we serve and who we support. And to note, between our students on an IEP, on a 504, where there are some accommodations that need to be made in terms of helping access curriculum, that's comprises 25% of our total student population. Okay, so this really is the portrait of the learner. The portrait of the learner basically articulates the dispositions and the characteristics that we are working to provide our learners as they move through the K-12 learning experience. So we are in the process of formalizing some of the I can statements, which we'll get to probably in the later part of the year, and then potentially start to begin to consider how to integrate it into curriculum. And we thought it was important to include the portrait of the learner because this is what we're striving to embark on and instill in the learners that are moving through our community. So as an overview, basically, as Vonda said, these are going to be highlights. I'm not going to read every single bullet on the slide because we will be here for a very, very long time. And while I would love to do nothing but spend a couple of hours in talking about this, this information, I would think that you'd rather read some of it yourself and have me just highlight some points. So I'm not going to read numbers. It's going to be high level and talking just about some of the celebrations and some of the areas of challenges. And then at the end, the principals are going to share their school improvement plans or highlights of their school improvement plans that will talk about some of the adult actions that they're embarking on and leading at the schools. So we'll start off with the AP, student achievement. The first slide, which will be on, I guess on the right side, depending on where you're looking, it's on my left. I'll call attention to really this really speaks to the numbers here. So it talks to the increased numbers of students that are challenging themselves with AP courses, which is really nice to see. So you can also see that we've had an increase in the number of tests taken by our students, and also a slight increase in the percentage of students that are scoring a score of 3+. So those are increases to certainly celebrate. The other chart shows you the percentage of students with scores of 3 or more. And you can see it's relatively flat, but did go up by 1 percentage point from last year. So we'll talk a little bit about the SAT school day assessment. This is given to 11th graders across the state of Connecticut in March of each year. They're assessed in 2 main areas, ELA on the evidence-based reading and writing, and math. And this slide these 2 slides are showing you the achievement with that. So you can see that in ELA, a celebration, and that our students, the percentage of students that are meeting or exceeding the standard went up by 5 percentage points, which is nice to see that 76% of our students met or exceeded the standard in ELA. And in math, not quite as celebratory, but nonetheless, it did also increase some percentage points as well. But we know that we have some work to do there. You'll also notice that the starting score in terms of meeting the range is 530 versus the 480 on the ELA side, which makes it a little bit more rigorous. And as we've talked about at the CAPE committee, we talked about at the board level, the national issue in terms of math performance, just really across the country. So some work to do there, certainly. Okay, I did include this slide because we felt that it was important to include this comparison. It's certainly not where we want to be, at the bottom pretty much of the DIRG, and it's not a new trend. This is not new to us this year. But, and certainly not all districts in the DIRG are the same. Not everybody's demographics are the same. There are a lot of variables and data that comes into play here. But it's important to note and to see where we're at. All right, so the Lost Links assessment, this was presented in spring. It's usually presented in the spring of each year, and it'll be presented again this coming spring. It's the assessment, it's the standardized tool that evaluates English language proficiency in students grades K through 12 in the 4 key language domains: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So these slides illustrate the Lost Links percentage of students by performance level. So those are the percentage of students at each of those performance levels. So while we only have 0.83 that are above proficient, the reason for that is by the time they get to that, they're pretty much testing out and exiting from the multilingual program. So you'll see that there's been a decline in the percentage that are meeting the average percentage of the individual growth targets that are met. And that's something that I do want to call some attention to in terms of our caseloads. At CLES, we have 74 students that are multilingual learners with 3 teachers, 1 TESOL and 2 bilingual. And we have 54 students between Wisconsin and the high school with 1 TESOL teacher. So they're spread pretty thin and doing a really good job considering the numbers of students and the numbers of them. With that said, we are very thankful and grateful for the board's support and the community's support in supporting the bilingual Portuguese teacher that was newly hired for this year, and she's a great addition to the team, so thank you for that. All right, moving into Smarter Balance. So this is administered to students in grade 3 through 8 in math and ELA. So we have a few slides on this page, but before going through that, I wanted to just explain some of the data in terms of achievement versus growth. So achievement is basically talking about the students either meeting or exceeding the standard. The average percentage of individual growth targets is basically the Smarter Balance uses a metric that measures how much a student grew relative to their target. So every student gets a specific target for growth based on their raw score performance. And they use a metric to determine that. And the average percentage of target achieved is that average percentage of that target that they got and whether they achieved it, right? It's what the state uses on the accountability report, which I'll be back in, I think, November or December to report on, and that's kind of like the Connecticut report card on those 12 indicators. So I just wanted to give you some context to the data. So you'll notice here in terms of some of the celebrations, we have 71% of our students in grade 7 in ELA that met or exceeded the target, the standard, excuse me. And you'll notice that 85% of students met the growth target moving from grade 3 to grade 4. And that's also a celebration for sure. We have 74% of our non-high needs met or exceeded. So let me talk a little bit about high needs versus non-high needs. High needs are defined by the by Connecticut State Department of Education as students on free and reduced lunch, on having an IEP, a 504, or multilingual learners. Okay, those are the student population in which there have been some systemic barriers, and we need to make sure that we're providing equitable experiences for them. So it's important to also see performance of all of our students, those that are the non-high needs versus the high needs. And you'll notice that certainly in terms of the percentage meeting or exceeding, we've got some work to do, right, to support our high needs students. And 74% of our non-high needs students met or exceeded. Contrastly, in terms of meeting individual growth targets, the average percent of the targets achieved in growth was pretty good. We had 81% of our non-high needs and 77% of our high needs. Now, these two slides here in terms of high needs and with meeting exceeding and the individual targets met is grades 3 through 8. So it's not delineated by grade, and as Vonda said, we have that information. It would just be so much to provide at that level. Okay, so certainly some work to do is grade 3, first time they're taking the test. So historically, we've seen grade 3 be a little bit lower than our other grades, and certainly grade 8 as well. And I believe we had a teacher that was out for around mid-year. I think we hired a newer grade 8 teacher, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, getting the shaking of the head by Mr. Render. Okay, moving on to math. So with math, you'll see here on this slide some areas of celebration is grade 6. You'll see that 97% of our students met their, the average percentage of the target was achieved was 97% of our students, moving from grade 5 to grade 6 math. So that is an area of celebration, and also moving from grade 3 to 4, 75%, right? Now that's very good, especially since in grade 3 and grade 5, the math scores in terms of the percentage of students meeting or exceeding was pretty low, right? So it's nice to see that they made up for that in terms of at least making their making a good percentage of their growth targets. So yes, grade 3, 5, and 8 is definitely an area where we've got some work to do. The other thing also is, I already talked about that, the 75%. And again, the non-high needs versus the high needs, right, in terms of meeting and exceeding. And then here, in terms of the average percentage of targets met, also the high needs are performing relatively the same as the non-high needs relative to making their growth percentages of their growth target. So this is a chart that you're used to seeing in years past. This is the cohort information for achievement. So you can kind of see even across the board from 2022 to present, you can see that, again, grade 3, certainly in ELA, and grade 8, some areas certainly to look at, some areas of challenge. But grades 4, 5, 6, and a nice 71% in grade 7 is cause for some celebration. So one thing to notice is in grade 7, for ELA and math, they increased this year from last year by 6 percentage points. And I think, Sarah, that was something you had noticed as well during the CAPE meeting, right? Okay. So here is our DER comparison with the ESPA. And again, this is an area of some work to do, right? So you can see grades 3 through 8 combined in ELA. We have 62% of students meeting or exceeding, and grades 3 through 8 in math, we have 54% of students meeting or exceeding. Moving on to science, okay? So in science, the NGSS assessment is assessing phenomenon and experiential-based thinking. It's designed to align directly to specific content and skill standards, and it really is a test that really synthesizes math, ELA, critical thinking, all in one, and in addition to science. So let's look at the data there. So you can see here that grade 5 improved from last year by 4 percentage points. Certainly something to look at, right, in grade 11, as they've gone down by 10 percentage points. And certainly an area, again, to be looking at is our percentage of students meeting or exceeding in the non-high needs, 70% versus 36% of our high needs, right? So again, math, ELA, all coming into play for all of the students that are taking this test as well. And here we are in the DIRG comparison in science. Okay, so this shows, this is a combined score, grades 5, 8, and 11, so the combination of that is 59%. So, all right. So moving on, as Vonda said, from a district bird's eye view, high level, these are just some of the foci that we have in terms of curricular enhancements for alignment and coherence. As you know, we've been embarking on the full implementation of CKLA and IM. We also, the curriculum folks and myself really advocated very strongly with the administration, with Dave, to really look at structural coherence and the teaming and scheduling structures, specifically in grade 5, but also in grade 4, to really redesign it to support instructional depth and make sure we had enough instructional minutes in math and ELA. So that has started this year. Curriculum leaders continue to develop curriculum, and we are still continuing to work on Portrait of the Learner. Some instructional approaches, you can read here, just as some highlights, is we have a few K-12 vertical teams, so we can really have some vertical conversations. We have one that's just the K-12 vertical curriculum leaders, and also a math K-12 team that's really working on problem-solving approaches, and they are working using building thinking classroom, mathematical thinking classrooms. And then just something else to call out is the K-12 leadership team for curriculum and MTSS, Multi-Tiered Systems of Support, formerly known as SERBI, also known as RTI, and working really to strengthen the implementation with a focus back on progress monitoring and student growth data. And building capacity through professional learning. And here, just to kind of point out that the admin council team, we're working to build capacity with our administrative team to really build capacity as instructional leaders. So these are just some of the professional learning that either already took place or that we will be embarking on continuously throughout the year. For example, leveraging the evaluation and support plan to enhance teaching and learning, and AI literacy, so we can develop a framework for the use of AI in teaching and learning. So those are just some of the highlights of some of the things that we're doing. So this slide wraps us up, and I feel as if Rena and Roy kind of said it earlier on in terms of what we're looking for to lead this district, right? And I say together we have the opportunity to do great things, right? And as Vonda said, it's important. You can't do great things unless you look at what your current reality is, right? So we really need to look at the current reality where we're at right now, because we have the opportunity to do great things. We do have a lot of very talented teachers that are really interested in doing some great things. So I am optimistic that together with the board, the community, and the talent that we have in our schools, that we have the opportunity to really do some great things for students.
Okay, that was a lot to digest. I kind of want to just kick off with just my own comments first. Just seeing this is the biggest thing that stood out to me was this achievement gap. It's huge. And it was here 8 years ago when I first joined the board. It was enormous. And we worked to slowly close it. And now it seems like it's back and it's wide open. And I don't know what happened, but it seems to me like there's a couple of different puzzle pieces that have come together in all of these reports, right? I mean, we have multilingual learners and those on free and reduced lunch, those numbers are going up and up and up. It seems like we have some sort of equity issue in terms of students are not coming to school with, you know, the same, they're not all equal when they walk in those doors, and yet we're maybe giving them curriculum that's just sort of, I don't know, it's not reaching all of our students. So it's kind of tough, but how do we sort of ensure that we're keeping all of this at the forefront when the district is in such flux? You know, because we can't, I mean, our goal is to hire a superintendent by the end of the year, but who knows if that's gonna happen. But even then, it's gonna take a little bit of time, right? So, like, even then, but they'll be new and they'll be in the middle of the school year, right? So how do we can't just like ignore this until that person gets their feet wet, you know? So how do we like do something about this now? Because sorry to ramble, but it seems like, you know, when there was a big problem with 5th graders with their math scores, we dumped a whole ton of attention onto that, and they spike up. So it seems like where we put the effort, it pays in dividends, but we're not seeing it sort of across the board. So how do we like ensure that we're like doing it in all ways, always?
Yeah, and I think that's a good segue for the school improvement plans, right? Because the principals have worked with their teams to talk about what are some adult actions that they plan to do together with the teams in order to address and speak to some of this student performance data, right? Because again, this is one data point. There are multiple other data points. But yeah, to your point, there's a lot to do to make sure that we're providing equitable access and making sure that we have the scaffold so that all students can access the curriculum. Now, just to keep in mind that while I showed you the performance of the high needs versus the non-high needs, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to have gaps on our accountability report card in every grade level. We do kind of know already that we will have a gap in grade 3. I believe it was in ELA, but I'm not sure. I'm getting the head nodding from Vonda. But we don't have all of that information yet. So we need to look and wait for it, and we'll have that in November. Nonetheless, we do have work to do. So that is one of the reasons that we brought in a evidence-based, research-based curriculum for ELA, and we're working hard to make sure that we have fidelity with the implementation. Similarly in math, because curriculum really designs the learning journey for students, and it's really important that we implement that with fidelity at first, because we don't yet know what we need to cut, keep, or create in order to meet the needs of our learners, right? So we're really in year 1 for our 4th and 5th graders in ELA implementation of CKLA, in year 2 for grades K through 3. We're in year 1 for K2 IM, I think year 2 for grade 3, and year 3, I believe, going on for grades 4 through 8. And we're also identifying, is it looking with fidelity, right? So these are things that are happening right now, and I think the principals can certainly speak to some of the data-informed work that they're planning to have at the schools. So yeah, to your point, we're not waiting for a new superintendent to walk in and not doing anything. This is definitely data that we need to pay attention to, but again, it's not new. This has been trending in this way for a number of years.
Yeah. Well, I also want to understand if we're looking at all of the factors and we're paying enough attention to them, right? Like if if our diversity in terms of high needs students has grown in lots of different directions, you know, are we looking at that, or are we just going to continue like spinning our wheels trying to focus on something while we're completely ignoring like perhaps one of the biggest factors? So I don't know if there's an answer to that, but yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right, I'll stop talking. But does anybody else have any questions, comments, please?
I know that science is, you know, it just recently started getting tested, but you know, we're seeing it in ELA, we're seeing it in math, and I mean the science scores are really low. I mean, they've gone down. You know, are we focusing there, or are we still just you know, like where do we focus first?
Yeah.
So, and it would be great if it was, you know, one area, one high need, but it's not. It's across all levels. So, you know, I just question, you know, as we start to go into the budget season, you know, do we have enough resources right now?
Yeah, I appreciate all the questions that you're raising. These are questions that we have been asking of ourselves, with our teachers, teams as well, right? You know, just to try to find like root cause analyses, right? Like
Yeah,
what
exactly.
brainstorming, like what variables, right? Because it's most likely not just one thing, right? So last year we identified, whoa, we only have 20 to 30 minutes maximum of math in grade 5. Well, hello, that's an issue, right? So these are the kinds of things that's part of it, right? Curriculum, instruction, assessment, scheduling, it all plays a part in that.
And I know you're hard at work for it, so it's not,
Yeah,
you
and
know,
it's not just
directed
me.
that you're not doing enough. I mean, that's
Yeah.
not what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
I
no,
just,
I know that.
I just, you know, is there more that we as a board need to provide to try and close these gaps?
Well, I think part of that is understanding the story, asking questions, right? That's super important. Using our expertise in the field and trying to work with the stakeholders to nail down, you know, how we can close this gap. But thank you, Deb, for this presentation. And we really appreciate transparency. We never really had this before, the real transparency of it. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I also wanted to say, just on like a personal positive note, to like feed what you guys are doing is really impacting. I have a current 5th grader, and the changes that have been made in that math curriculum and the structure of the 4th and the 5th grade have really benefited the students. And so I appreciate, you know, that was really looked at, and that's where we're seeing real growth. I think it what you are doing and where we are looking and the direction we are going is making a real impact to learners. So I appreciate that too, as a board member and as a parent.
And it took us a number of years to get here, right? So we really need to also understand it's going to take us a number of years to, you know, to move out from where we are. But with, you know, purposeful, meaningful planning, I am very confident that we, as I said, have the opportunity to really do some great things.
And an important point too is, given we've invested in, you know, illustrative math, and CKLA is doing that with fidelity. That's
Yes.
super important, and
It
you know,
is.
the admin team's really regulating that and making sure that the programs are being carried out the way as it's intended.
Yes, it is. It
Super
really
important.
is super important, for sure.
Sarah, any comments? Rob? All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, Vonda, sorry, you had a comment?
That's okay, thank you. Just through the chair, so I do just want to say that it was a risk to put some of this information in here for you. I appreciate the fact that you recognize that. You know, when Deb and I looked at it, I think at one point she kind of like raised one of her eyebrows. And I said, yep, we're going to do this, because first of all, it's our community, and these are our children, and so we appreciate your sense of urgency, and we want to just make sure that our focus is deliberate and collaborative and all in the same direction. I also think it's really important for you to have these conversations and show this commitment, because candidates are going to be looking, and they need to see where we're at, because you want the right person to come here who can move the needle. So
I think
we don't
we
want.
share this as our number one priority.
Yeah, it's teaching and learning and growth. And so for us to put it out on the table now and say, this is where we are and we want to move collectively, I think that's a huge message for somebody to see, because you want somebody to come here who wants to help you move in the right direction. The teachers want to, they want
Yep.
to, the administrators want to. So,
We are
thank
ready
you.
to roll up our
Rhonda, can I just
sleeves
ask you a
and do
quick
the hard
question?
work.
Would it behoove us to really look at, like, I know our numbers went down at the high school, we're 37 less students, but because I know a lot of these students, there's so many students that continually leave our high school, to go to other schools, other placements, private schools, things like that. Is it, would it be important to look at that and really investigate why our students are leaving?
We certainly can, and we certainly
'Cause I
should
feel
be
like we've
looking
never-
to see. I mean, I don't know what grades they were in. We certainly can look at that data. It is interesting to look at that data and see how many, even in the middle school, opt out of the entire
Because I think those
high
37, I
school.
mean, I could probably give you 20 names.
I don't want
of
you
the
to.
30. No, I won't do that.
Okay,
No,
thank
I
you.
wouldn't do that. But I could tell you
Right,
of
so,
that,
right,
of
so,
the,
but
that
that's-
number.
Yeah, so we definitely can look at that, absolutely, as another data point. Thank you.
Great. All right, I think we can move on to the school improvement plans.
Yes. So I'm going to invite Dr. Psaki up to talk about the CLES School Improvement Plan highlights.
And just before Dave starts, I'm gonna jump in again,
Sure.
because that's what I do. So, the administrators tonight, they're here and they're reluctantly limiting themselves. They each could and were willing to stand here and talk for many, many, minutes to you about their plans. They actually gave me a bit of a hard time when I kept decreasing their time slot. So the reality is, the plans, I want them posted. I want them posted, the full plans. I want them posted on the website. I want the community to be able to see. I want our administrators to be kind of updating their families. Hey, these are things we're working on. As a member of your community, we should know what we're working on. We will come back probably in February and do a mid-year update. Here's what we're working on. Hey, we changed our mind on this. We decided to do this instead. That's the good stuff. So tonight, they're just highlighting on a few things, and I did give them the heads up that I, as a leader, am most interested in what adult actions are we doing that's going to be different than what we have done in the past that might merit a different result. It may not, but what are we going to try to do that might merit some growth or change? So again, word for word, the plans will be out there. I apologize, I take full ownership. I thought they were sent to you last week. I, of course, never gave them to Lisa. My fault. Deb's like, where are they? I'm hoarding them. So, and the last thing I want to say is that, you will have a new permanent superintendent, and the way these look is as different as everybody's fashion design. So you very much could have a new superintendent who comes in and looks at the design of the school improvement plan and says, hey, administrators, I want to work with you. Tell me what you really want to showcase. Let's change the structure. Let's change the content. So you might have something completely different next year, and that is so fine. So just know that what they're sharing, they're it may shift for you. Thank you.
Thank you, and I promise I'm just going to do the highlights. I will not be too comprehensive. But before I do begin, I do want to echo what Deb had said, that we have two great curricular programs in place, CKLA and IM. We're fully implemented K through 5. Also, with the increased instructional time for math, I think it's worth saying again, we have increased instructional time for math. We have 80 to 85 minutes in 4th and 5th grade. We have 70 to 80 minutes in grades 1, 2, and 3. So the time is there. It's built in. We have the teaming structure that's there that needs to be. We're full on elementary school model now. Rosa brought up a good point. Like, we put so much effort and energy into certain areas. Well, what we're doing at CLES this year is really putting the effort and energy across Tier 1 instruction and strengthening that MTSS process, which reaches all students. As you know, 100% of students receive Tier 1. So specifically, we're looking at monthly meetings. We're going to really hyper-focus on the aim lines for every student, in particular those who are well below benchmark and below benchmark. So those of you who don't know, M-Class, we use M-Class for reading and M-Class for math, and they create aim lines. So the beginning of the year data point, and they print out this or create this trajectory of where they have to be to get to mid-year. So if they are well below, that's a very sharp and increased trajectory line, whereas if they're above, of course, it's a little flat, but still, we're going to pay attention to those students. I'm just going to speak briefly with the monthly meetings, what that looks like. So if we have somebody who's really below and is at red, we're going to, within the classroom setting, classroom interventions, they're going to have 5 in-class interventions, and then we're going to progress monitor. Then we're going to have 5 more, we're going to progress monitor. We're going to have 5 more, we're going to progress monitor. So every month, we're going to have those 3 data points for progress monitoring. Hopefully, if the intervention in the classroom is working, those data points are going to be on or above that aim line. If they're not, what we're doing is either maybe it's kind of working, maybe they need more intensive interventions within the classroom. Whatever it is that they need, we're sitting around the table with an entire grade level and my curriculum specialists, Jim and Julie, who I can't say enough about, and we're really going to look at each individual student in that aim line and what do we need to do to make sure this progress monitoring is keeping them on the aim lines. So if we get those 3 points, wonderful. We'll continue the interventions. Maybe the next month we'll do 5 with the progress monitoring, 5 with the progress monitoring. We'll do it twice as long as they're still staying on the aim line. So we're looking at all of those students. And then if they're at or above, maybe 1 or 2, or if they're at benchmark, 1 or 2, just checkpoints to make sure that we're not losing them. And if a teacher is saying, hey, wait a minute, based on my classroom instruction, I don't know if they're where they need to be, progress monitor to make sure they are. With respect to the IABs, we're going to go beyond a perfunctory, hey, we did it, one and done, we did the IAB. We're really going to use these strategically. We have our teachers working with our curriculum specialists, and the state has provided a bunch of IABs and good ones. So what they're going to do is align those with the CKLA and IM units. We'll teach the unit, we'll give the IAB. We'll do this a lot more than once, hopefully at least 4 times, if not 5, before we get to the ESPA. And the reason for that is now we're giving the students the experience and the language and the format of showing what they know. Maybe it's they know the material, they're just, oh my gosh, look at this format, I can't show them knowing this format. But again, by meeting monthly to share the results around the table, how we do in the IEBs, instructional tools, how they do. Hey, they did great, wonderful. Oof, they didn't do great, but I know they know the material, so maybe we can look at the questions and give them more examples of questions and wordings and formats that are similar. As far as professional learning, we have our curriculum specialists are facilitating our PLC blocks, and they're going to be supporting staff with CKLA and IM implementation all year long, and the Tier 1 instructional strategies. We also have Tier 1 instructional strategies for our MLLs. Nikki Galvez came in during our PD day and worked with the TESOL teachers, did this amazing presentation for my entire staff on instructional strategies for MLs. For school climate, hopefully you'll all remember our spotlight where we had those kiddos who were so proud that they were recognized. We're doing that monthly this year. We have these monthly assemblies, pause assemblies, to recognize, not only does it recognize and kind of appreciate and celebrate all the students who are celebrating, but it also reinforces those behavior expectations monthly with a K2 assembly and a 3-5 assembly. And hopefully we can get Class C back at all the assemblies because the kids love to see Class C. Just quickly on expanding, we have several peer mentorship programs. One that's coming back I'm thrilled about, and it's because you, sir, are starting earlier. So now we have a nice chunk of afternoon time with high school kids. We had over 90 high school students, were you one of them, who said they're going to be a big friend of Huckleberry. I'm sure you're full of extracurriculars that you're doing. But we do have over 90, so we're so excited about that, that they're going to come back and they're going to come and work in the classrooms, work with students, both on the playground and in the classrooms. We also have our PBIS rewards referral system. That's just our disciplinary referral system. And so the nice thing is that collects the data for the behavior interventions. The teachers, there's a behavior that needs to be referred to the office. They fill out the PBIS rewards referral system. Here's what the behavior is. Here's what I've done as a classroom teacher, notified parents. Then it comes to us as administrators. So we then work with the child, or whether it's a restorative circle or whatever we need to do, enter that into the referral system. Immediately, that gets back to the teachers. So that really closes the communication gap of, gosh, I sent that kid to the office. What did they do? With family engagement communication, we have our amazing new Katie Robeson is our music teacher. She's going to do K through 2 concerts. So we're excited for that. So the entire grade level, and she's kind of teasing how it's going to be organized. Maybe each class is going to sing a song, but I'm really looking forward to that. The class chronicle will continue based on parental feedback. They wanted to see more calendar highlights, more procedural reminders and updates, and curriculum resources for parents and PTO events. So that's all included in the chronicle now. And then our class connects, which is once every 6-day cycle. That's just communication for staff. And the one new thing we're doing this year is the staff's news slides. So now if we have a new staff member, we can take a picture with little clips. Now, because we're such a huge school with 200 staff members, with the new, here's the new face, so to speak. Our new social worker starting Monday. If somebody's having a child or getting married, engaged, all of that news can now be shared to heighten that community awareness in our building. So that's the highlights of our school improvement planning class.
I do have one question, and it relates to the progress monitoring that you mentioned, which sounds great, but how will you be ensuring that you're continuously using and looking at that data? Like what are you gonna be using it for?
We are meeting monthly to look at these lines. So there's
You
the
with the teachers?
So
Yeah.
during the PLC block once a month, that's the focus of the meeting. We're going to be looking at these aim lines of these students, and if there's too many students to do it to the aim lines, you find the time. We have Jim and Julie and our whole admin team who will sit. And like I said, if what's happening isn't working, I think it's really important to have that whole grade level there's, if it's fourth grade, for example, there's 10 professionals right there that can help us with some other strategies or techniques that we could use at that tier 1 level.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
And
Any
the
other- yeah, go
well,
ahead.
and the data collection or progress monitoring is going to be the same consistently for each child. Like what progress monitoring?
Well, we're always going to
doing?
focus using the M-Class system, our
Okay.
M-Class progress monitoring.
All right,
Yeah.
thanks.
Sure.
Anyone else? All right, thank you.
And just a quick thank you to Stephanie for that plug on your child having a great day.
I don't know if that went over the time limit or not.
7 minutes.
Some of the things, hi, I'm Dean Redden, I'm the principal at Wisconsin Middle School. Some of the things that you will see here, obviously, are things that Dave brought up, and I'm sure will be similar even when Mark comes up as we talk about the different things that we're doing at the schools, but really that same through line in a sense as you go up. So I'll start with our educational outcomes. Dave was just speaking about the multi-tiered support system, MTSS protocols that we have. In the past, we have done it where we met every other week, and 1 week was teachers putting together information or things that students that were struggling, and then 2 weeks later they would meet as a team and start more to talk about the interventions. We changed that a little bit this year. We are, and thank you to the board, we are able to have, oops, did I just knock out of that? We're able to have, come on, Dean, you could do this. 3 different meetings now for interventions. So we're going to have we have a math intervention 1 week with the teachers that are in math and science for the team with our math curriculum leaders and also administration. Then the following week we're going to have literacy, which is literacy, social studies, and our world language. And then the following week we're going to have the whole entire team, and we're going to be doing work around our social emotional with behaviors. So it's a little bit different this year, which we think is going to make a difference. Also, we've had, for our social emotional interventions before, we have had areas where we'd pull kids for ELT time, which is a small amount of time. I think most of you know our ELT is about 30 minutes by the time students get there. And we've had in the past where they've worked with social workers, with counselors, school psychologists. They will still be doing that, but this year we are looking to have, which we currently have a math intervention with a math lab, and we also have a reading intervention for periods of time where students are taken out of their specials class for a period of time. We're doing that now with also our behavioral MTSS, where students are with a curriculum of DBT, behavioral supports, and then also a separate one for executive functioning, which we just started. So we feel that that's going to make a difference, having those specific ones for 6 to 8 weeks, and it's for the whole entire, every other day, like the student would have the specials class. It would be every other day instead of just maybe once a week during that ELT time or twice a week during ELT time. So it's a little bit more time allotted to it. Again, Dave brought up the ESPA and NGSS interim assessment blocks that we have. We've used them before. We're going to continue, as we've talked about, that the data that we get back from those scores that we have or assessments that we have are utilized for our future planning, like where the kid's really struggling in this area. And for those of all of us that know are teachers, you do that with certain assessments that you have. Obviously, we like to use the interim assessments because those are similar to what the kids will see on the Smarter Balance tests or the NGSS tests. So that's something that we're going to be working on, and meeting. The data that we get from those will be shared at our department meetings. A little bit different than with a team meeting because this is more specific to a department that they have. So it would be 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, say math together. 6th, 7th, and 8th grade literacy, science. Professional learning. We obviously are giving time for the goals that we have with our new plan that we have for the evaluation plan. But to me, the more important ones are the bottom two are created targeted PD opportunities for our staff around our ML learners. Our numbers have increased, like we talked about. Our current 6th grade level, we were very lucky to have Nikki Galvez got one of the teachers from CLES that had worked with these students to come up and literally meet with our team of teachers and help them, give them resources. And because she had been so close in working with those students, she was able to give different ideas for the teachers to be able to help them with their instruction. And not just with their instruction, but also pulling them to the side, whether it was an intervention with them specifically or with one of our intervention teachers, which was a success, definitely. She is also going to be coming, like Dave talked about. She's going to be coming to us and doing professional development for our staff, whether it's going to be, we're not sure yet, we're working if it's going to be on the PD day or during a faculty meeting or building leader day that she's going to come and work with the whole entire staff. Because not every, as we know, not every staff member may have a student. We have our MLL students are in specific classes, so they have support. But as we talked about before, that support at Wisconsin in the high school is every other day. Just because we have one person that's to split it between those days. So the person isn't there consistently. But with this, we're also talking about ways when they're not there that we could make sure that those students obviously are able to, our teachers are able to have plans and set for students that are struggling in those areas. And then this is another one I just think is, as we all talk about artificial intelligence, AI. We already have Mr. Bednarik went to a conference, our assistant principal went to a conference before the school year and met with our teachers and did a little one on Google AI. And then Jackie Whiting, our library media specialist, and Colby Fitzgerald, our 8th grade literacy teacher, have been working together. And they did one recently on school AI. And going forward, we are looking to find ways that we could have a little breakout for PD times, where if people want more information about that one or how they're using it as a resource for teacher, but also for differentiating instruction for all of our learners, whether it's ML student, whether it's a special education student, whatever it may be, that they're able to utilize that to be better prepared for that. School climate, there's really, I don't say anything new per se, but it's our second year of doing the web, which is where everyone belongs for our 6th grade student orientation. It was bigger and more students going into 6th grade came this year than the previous year. Those lessons, our 8th grade students, our web leaders, are leading those lessons. I think I said this before, but just if you think about it, and if you follow me on Instagram, if you don't, give me a click. But you'll see the pictures I have, and I tell you, it's like Dave was talking about the high school kids coming down to work with the younger kids. When the 8th graders are sitting there and they're teaching lessons to 6th graders, it always makes me kind of giggle a little bit when the kids aren't really paying attention. Mm-hmm. The teacher's in there too, and they try to get the kids to, to stop goofing around or whatever it may be. But the 8th graders, they take it very seriously, and it's so cool. But we have a certain amount of lessons, and we're changing something up. The kids said to us last year they didn't want to have to, not that they didn't want to have the lesson throughout the year, they wanted to also be a part of the next one I talk about is Unplugged Hour. They felt like they were missing out a little bit on that in 6th grade. So this year, halfway through, we are going to then switch over with a 6th grade Unplugged. But some of those activities that we had talked about before, again, just because I think it's pretty cool, we have teachers doing lawn games, yoga, there's a Just Dance, there is a reader's theater, jewelry making, there's Miss Fitz's Fancy Nails. So it's a way for kids to develop those relationships. And it may not even be a teacher they have. It may be an older, the next level, or maybe a level behind them, grade level. But it's another way for kids to really, make that connection with staff. And it's fun, and to see their teachers in those ways, I think is really, really neat. The Say Something app with Sandy Hook Promise we've had before. As you know, that is something we monitor, and it's pretty much monitored 24/7. And anything around bullying, crisis intervention, mean-spirited behavior, whatever it may be, anything that crosses our plate with that, we not have to investigate. We absolutely investigate it and follow through. Sometimes it's hard because we get anonymous ones, and I see these guys shaking their head because we've gotten phone calls at 11 o'clock at night, and we sometimes have to get the Brookfield Police involved, depending on what the tip is. But these are things that we follow up with, every time that something crosses our plate. The other one I wanted to bring up here was restorative practices, because we know that with the new state law and school climate laws, making sure that we're using those with our students. We want to be able to create those opportunities for students to better that relationship, that maybe, or repair that relationship, and also for obviously the social emotional learning aspect of it, where we want to get deeper into what's really going on. We all know that students behave and adults, we behave for a reason. But we have to be able to repair those relationships, because as we know, as a teacher, there may be an interaction between me and a student, and guess what? I had that student has me for the rest of the year. So we got to sit down and we really got to talk about it. It's almost like with siblings sometimes, like, we need to get along. So what are we going to do to make this happen? And I think that sometimes can be a very powerful conversation with students. Family engagement, same type of things. Again, I think that we do, on a year, we've asked parents what their things that they may be looking for or would want to hear from us, or have someone come in to teach on. Also opportunities for just to be in the school. I know there's opportunities a lot at the elementary school. There's not as many at the middle school for parents to come in, but we all obviously do look to we have the walkathon, we have music showcases, art showcase, career fair, we have our Veterans Day that's coming up, we have the book fair, all little things that we have. Junior achievement we have through the community of Brookfield. It's also a lot of parents or people that have come through Brookfield school system, which is really cool, that come back. And the career fair is also another one that we a lot of times will get WMS alum that come and do the career fair for us, which is really awesome to see. And then our monthly newsletter, again, just making people aware of everything that's going on. Our teacher posts, keeping parents aware of what's going on in the classroom, which is very important, and through Power School. And then of course our WMS Instagram that makes you smile and see all the fun things that we're doing at Wisconsin and celebrating. Any questions?
During the Tech Free, the Unplugged Hour, do they have an opportunity to play any sports or anything like that?
Yes.
Anything like they do?
I just didn't say those
Athletics?
because
I was
those are
just
like
curious, yeah.
there's volleyball, there's
That's
I think
awesome.
there's a basketball,
I think
there's a
that's
volleyball.
awesome.
Yeah. And again, it's one of those things where there's kids that like the physical thing.
Right.
There's also we have a music one that students. It's I think it was called, I don't know if it was rock or something like that, music that kids were into. Yeah, different things that kids they want to do, and they find it really cool when they know that their teachers wants to go. They're all excited about going to this new Rush concert that's coming out, or at Mohegan Sun. They're all talking about. Takes me back to the day.
That's good.
I just have a question. When you were talking about the MTSS
Yep.
educational outcomes for math, literacy, emotional, and UNAH, are we
Yeah.
going to start involving science in there?
Well, it's for us. Science is with the math right now, and it's
Okay.
interesting because we had this conversation the first. Obviously, there's a lot of reading and writing in science too.
Yeah.
But like Dave did say, when we tried to make it, we want that time to be productive for staff. And that's obviously times that we want them to be meeting, preparing, and collaborating with their content partners and things. So right now we have math and science together. I apologize if I didn't say it before. And then we have literacy, social studies, and world language together. Okay. But we did say to science that, we're going to see how this goes, and we may move them to the literacy. But we also want other people there because we want more minds to come up with ideas and ways that we think that could help in intervention. So thank you for bringing that up, if I didn't say that.
Along similar lines
Mhm.
regarding the MTSS, and maybe you said it, and maybe this is a question more appropriate for Vonda, but how are you collectively ensuring that this data is being looked at frequently enough to be agile enough to make changes?
Well, what we do is we go through that data that we have, and like I said, sometimes it goes to a department meeting, if it's considered math or with the ELA, and also with our curriculum leaders that we have. And the big thing is when students aren't making that progress. We have students that are consistently not making that progress. Right now, Dave brought up M-Class. That is something that we're looking into. We haven't had. Now that it's K through 5, we're looking to make it also through 8. We've used the cadence before, which we've done, you guys have known, the beginning, middle, and the end of the year. with that, we're able to, with this M class, we're able to do it more often. And I think it's a little bit more data that would be more of beneficial for us than with just Acadians, because Acadians, I'll give you an example for math, is more about basic skills. It is. It's more about just the basics of math skills. So we are collecting that data. When kids are consistently not doing well, that's when we're moving in. And I don't know if I mentioned before, we have our math lab, which is during UNH time, but we also have math tutoring during their ELT time. So it's a shorter period of time where we are working on, part of it is on skill, and then part of it is on helping the students with the current thing that they're doing in the math class at that time.
Okay. I think that's
so-
more along the lines of my question is, can you use that data to quickly do something
Yep.
for a student?
Yeah, and if we continually see that, obviously in a negative, like the students that are in the red, and I think sometimes we get not confused, but when Deb was showing the scores up here, when they had the growth chart, we have to remember that those numbers, like, wow, 97% made the growth chart, because when they come up with those scores, it takes them from where they are, and the whole idea is if a kid is a half a year, say, behind in something, our mindset is they need to grow a year and a half, because if they just grow a year, they're still a half a year behind, right? So when you see those percentages, that's for us. We want it to meet the growth target, but sometimes that growth target isn't. I'm saying it's not at grade level, right?
Yeah.
But that's what we're pushing for. So when we consistently see that, we also set up times where we've moved kids, and it's a process where we can move them in and out, obviously during a special, and we still do have. I'll tell you, we still do have parents that opt out of these services, which we do our best to try to listen. We understand they want to go to special. I get it. Those are probably my favorite classes, but at the same time, we want them to be able to have these basic skills, or for us to help remediate those skills now, because we do that, as Dave said, in tier 1 in the classroom, but it's a different story when we're getting to tier 2, and then obviously tier 3 is where it's pretty much a 1-to-1 or 1-to-2 ratio. So.
Okay.
Yep.
If
So-
I may, it might be helpful for the board if I can see maybe that you're not as familiar with M-Class as perhaps I thought you might be. It might be something that we could put together a brief presentation to bring to the CAPE committee, and then perhaps if that is interesting enough and get your feedback, we could
I mean, it'd be
do a
interesting
short
to look at. I just
presentation.
wanted to make sure that, like, you had tools that you were, readily using.
I think if you see the
Yes,
tools
yeah.
without student identifying information, I think if
Yeah.
you see the tools that it provides, I think it would be very interesting for the board to see.
Cool. Yeah.
At our level, it's much more intricate than the Acadians that we have. Definitely. That's where we're looking to get that way.
So
Move
I
it.
think just kind of connecting back to what Rose is asking, and also tying it in with the data, achievement report. I think for me, the parent engagement, that's obvious stuff. Improved communication, that's all generic kind of items. Improving school climate sounds great. All those items. For me, the improving educational outcomes is really the meat and potatoes of.
Yeah.
Not discounting the other work.
'Cause we all need those other
areas.
things.
Those are important too.
Yep.
For example, curriculum specialists. Like, to me, that's really generic. Like, department meetings, curriculum work, data review, and sharing new learning with staff. So I'd really want to know more about that, like how that looks, given the situation that we're in right now with test scores. So for me, I kind of want to see more with that. I couldn't bring up the CLES one before, but for that, it says curriculum specialists utilizing PLC blocks to support staff in humanities and STEM. So, like, how are they supporting the staff now, given, what we know and the position that we're in with test scores? How does it look different for the curriculum specialists now? Because those are really powerful positions, and they're the ones really in charge of spearheading that change and, making changes and improvements. So.
And that's a lot in the area of curriculum, obviously, right?
Right.
They're not the interventionists, but they're in that area of making sure that we are following those standards and the curriculum that we
Right.
have. And like Dave said, and you said before, with the fidelity that we have with those programs, with IM and with, we don't have M-Class, not M-Class, CKLA,
Yeah.
but we do have.
So I guess maybe like a follow-up, that would
So
be.
maybe at the mid-year point in February, we can provide some specific examples of what has been done in those areas. Like, that is what I would be anticipating.
Okay.
That's a good question.
And if you've changed your mind, saying that we actually have to divert or detour because we realize we should focus more on this.
Correct. Thank you for
Okay. Anyone else? Stephanie, you good on this? All right. I assume we have Mr. Belanda now.
Dr. Pepsowski informed me that because Mr. Renda took 20 minutes, I now have 30 seconds to share. I will go a little bit longer than that. Right. There it is. All right, so you've heard a lot, and as we said, I'm not going to read at you, and I think it's an important piece that I picked up that Vonda brought up at the very beginning. She talked about the importance of collaboration, right, and that time that we have and how important that is into improving things, particularly educational outcomes, and I heard from the first two sets of information that was presented, it's a real important, obviously, it's the crux of our work, right, educational outcomes for kids. And so those members that have been on CAPE also know that we've had significant conversations about grading and scores and final exams, right? And so it's important for me, whether I'm talking about, course grades or grade analysis or PSAT scores or SAT scores, or even the MTSS program, which you've heard a lot about in different places. It's that collaboration time. I want to talk about how that actually happens and what that looks like. Some of this is newer, right? The things that we're doing in MTSS that this year in particular are going to be different than we've done in the past, which is helpful. As is some of the structures remain the same for looking at PSAT, SAT, and grades, but it's a different focus than we've had in previous years. So to share with you, we have things called CLTs, right? Call them PLCs, call them CLTs, whatever you want to call them. The acronym's the same, right? It's collaborative learning time, professional learning communities, whatever you want to call it. We have those embedded in our for our teachers once every 4 days for 80 minutes, right? That collaboration time is huge. That allows them the opportunity to look in real time at how Emily's class did in a particular subject, right? Those teachers can work together and say, here's areas of improvement, it's been used in the past more towards planning, less about the actually analysis of grades and data moving forward, because I think we always feel this push to get to the next thing. Okay, we taught this, we assessed this, then we move on to the next thing, because the curriculum's this wide, right? And what the board and other people have asked us to do, and it's a good question, is to go back and review and say, okay, how did we do on that? Can we do anything differently moving forward? That's important. It's always a challenge and a balance between what do you remediate that kids struggled with and still move forward to make sure they get to that end point. So the change in that focus is using that time for for the teachers to do that, to look at grades at the end of the quarter as the quarter approaches, right? To look at those grading policies and practices and what are the scores that are coming back and how are kids doing on things in particular topic, skill, things of that nature. We will get PSAT scores back. Today was the PSAT day. I have to put a plug in there. 593, I think, tests we gave today. So shout out, she's not listening. I guarantee she is sleeping right now. Rosa Hopcroft, our school counseling secretary, who essentially has become our standardized testing coordinator, from the digital student readiness all the way through today. I just to put a plug for her, she's amazing. The fact and this will tie into some other things that Mrs. Tenza talked about getting one-to-one Chromebooks, because that was a challenge today, to get everybody on the same device. But that being said, we'll have the PSAT scores back, right, in a couple weeks, right, because it's digital, it's very helpful. We also do an admin CLT, because I do believe that if teachers are gonna do this and we're asking faculty to meet every 4 days, we do that as well as an administrative team. So the principal, myself, the two assistants, the department heads are also there as well. And then sometimes Mr. Baldwin is, depending on what athletic activities perk up at that time of day, because it always happens to be a 1 o'clock meeting, and he's going to be real busy at that point in time. But we're going to be looking at those PSAT scores as soon as they come back, right? And looking at those things and trying to identify certain areas of improvement, things we have compared to the SAT from last year, the PSAT from the other grades from the previous years. We'll be able to compare some of those things and look a little bit more. What I'm excited about is that from the budget last year, I know it's really hard to get excited about testing, but we budgeted for spring PSAT, right? So we're going to get another opportunity for benchmark. It's great. M-class dibbles and CKLA and all those things at the elementary, and then you start to see a little bit less as you go to middle school, and then once you come to high school, this abrupt break, stop it, there isn't anything. And I'm part of a group, Connecticut Association of Schools does a monthly connection, so all these principals and administrators get together, and that was the topic I brought forward. What are you using? Well, we used to use MAP. So we don't have that stuff now. At least a lot of people are using PSAT at least fall and spring because it gives a standardized reference. So we're for the first time in a very long time going to have how the kids did in the fall and how they're doing in spring 9, 10, and 11. That will be huge for us. We haven't done that. So we'll be able to have those scores and take a look at that. It doesn't give us the same rich information we used to get from the SAT back in the day, thanks to the adaptive test that the SAT and PSAT has become, but it will give us something, some general trends that we can look at. So that stuff we're going to look at the admin CLT. And then, as I think some of you at CAPE have heard from what Mr. Hill has talked about, the things they're doing to actually incorporate types of style and questions that are like the SAT or PSAT. We don't have the interim assessment blocks, right, like the SBA has. We do have them for NGSS, which isn't on here, but that is something that the science teachers do work on, is the NGSS interim assessment blocks. We do have those, and they utilize those. Shout out to the science teachers and the PD. This past week, October 13th, Mr. Hill had his science teachers breaking down a performance task to see where it fits in the 3 dimensions. So they had to work backwards and then develop their own from that. That was an actual task, and I can certainly share that with CAPE if they're interested at some point. So really, when I tell you we're digging into this stuff, we're digging into how we can do this, design better tasks for our students, and then once we have that information, what do we have to do next? So MTSS, I said, is a different process than we've had before a little bit. We're now bringing teachers in, which I know to people sounds like, what do you mean, bringing teachers in? It was an admin-driven or support services-driven types of meetings. We split them a couple years ago into 2 different pieces with student mental health and behavioral supports, and then an academic piece. There was 2 different meetings. They met every other week, so you had a meeting every week. It was either academics or it was mental health and behavior conversations. Now when it comes to some of the academic ones, we're inviting teachers in. We're figuring out ways to get them coverage to come in and talk about what's going on specifically in the class. I know it sounds like we should have been doing that all along. It's not the easiest thing to schedule in a high school schedule to make those teachers available. We knew that was a critical component. If we're identifying areas or students that are having specific difficulties in a core academic area, bring those teachers in. Let's talk more about some strategies and provide what you've been doing, what's working, what's not working. It's a 20-minute hit. It's helpful from that perspective. And then the other thing, in terms of educational outcomes, there is state legislation about making sure that there's opportunity for all students to take at least 1 rigorous course, right? So we'll be looking at the program of studies after we do budget, which is coming up soon for submissions. Next step is rolling into program of studies and looking at that and looking at prerequisites and seeing, are we actually open enrollment for people or are we restricted? Because I have had some questions about that. So we're going to look at that and analyze and figure out what we can do to help improve those outcomes. That kind of ties that whole thing in. Professional learning continues throughout, right? What does that look like? I told you a little bit about what Mr. Hill did last week. Each department did something a little bit different, but also similar in looking at student outcomes and what we can do to help develop assessments and take a look. I actually have the world language is having conversations. Do we really want STAMP or Apple? What gives us the best data for our kids? So they're having those conversations from that perspective. But as you know, every teacher with a new, every faculty member, and I have to be careful to say faculty, right? Because sometimes I say teacher, and I really mean faculty, because it's also about the school social workers and the school counselors and we don't forget about them, but we lump them into that teacher. So they're having the opportunity to explore. And what does that look like? Well, I have some school counselors that are doing some training on the science of the teenage brain, right? That are going into that. Others that are looking at DBT skills and how to better develop those skills. But then I have other people that are still working on supports for paraprofessionals and how to better integrate a paraprofessional or adult learner into a classroom to help support the work that we're doing. That's huge, given, as we've had conversations before about, we only co-teach in 2 different subjects and everything else is adult support. So how do we better utilize that? So we're able to provide that support and things like that. We'll be looking at our next faculty meeting, leveraging faculty meetings, building directed meetings, some of our Wednesday meetings that you know that we have. We're going to be looking at the school's core values and beliefs, right? And we're starting as a faculty. We'll roll that out and have that conversation. Do we still believe this is what we believe in, right? And what does that look like? We'll be bringing students into that conversation. We're also doing conversations about AI, as Mr. Renda talked about, which is the future of everything at this point. And then my other focus is Tier 1 best instructional practices, coming up with a set of best instructional practices for all students to have and exhibit. When I say that to teachers, everybody has their bag of tricks, but we want to have a more universal Tier 1 set of best agreed upon instructional practices that every student gets, and provide some training to make sure that we have those set. Because when we talk about MTSS, it's that triangle that, 100% everybody gets that core. We need to solidify that and make sure everybody is getting that stuff. That helps us determine how kids move from up to the tier. If everybody's getting this, then we know that we can move somebody up to the next tier of support because we know they all got the same thing. So now we know how to differentiate after it. So we're trying to level the playing field there a little bit. School climate. School climate committee met today. It's the largest climate committee meeting I've ever had. And it was fantastic because I didn't have to really run it, which was a really awesome thing. We had student representatives from every grade. We had, I think, 7 teachers. Somebody from the youth commission was there. We had a parent, and this is all in like short notice where we turned it around to have the meeting pretty quickly after initial conversation. We had a parent that's coming. We have 2 other parents that are planning on coming. And we looked at survey data. When I tell you this is with the students as well, here's our mid-year school climate survey data, here's our end-of-year school climate survey data. And the 2 climate coordinators directed that analysis of that data today. Let's look at that. What are some trends that you're picking up? One of the students raised his hand and says, my parents are both teachers, and there seems to be some conversation about unhappiness with professional development, and my parents feel the same way at their school. Okay, well, that's interesting. But that came up. That is the kind of organic conversations. Kids saying, well, the staff said they're concerned about building conditions, right? That came up pretty high. And the students are like, it's not really that bad. And it was conversations that it's just so interesting to hear the perspective. So when I say we're looking at the school climate data, they're looking at what things that we can move forward and try to identify priorities moving forward. We also see each school has to create a school climate improvement plan due in December. We're running that right through that committee. So like this stuff continues to work. And because it's after school, so not every kid can go, there's also going to be every other month an opportunity during ILT for kids to come in during the day and weigh in on the topics that the kids decide about, right? The students that are on the meeting, that are there they kind of become captains. They come to the ILT meeting every other month, but they also represent the school climate committee at the same time after school. So we'll get some more student input, which is really, really important. And obviously, we're going to continue to do other activities to continue to improve the climate. One example is No Place for Hate, that's in there. But then I'm also excited because we're finally going to implement Link Crew, which is a huge one. I have to give that shout out. It's taken some time. We've got 2 teachers trained, ready to go. So that 9th grade transition program for those incoming 9th graders this summer is going to be so much different and so much better, particularly because the kids in the middle school have been part of WEB and they understand what that is. When we talk about the transition here to high school, it's going to just be that much better and continuous throughout the year instead of a standalone event. So we're really doing a lot of different things to try to build that climate and culture and help bring that up. And then student family engagement continues to be obviously something that we're always going to talk about. At the PTO meeting the other night, the conversation was, and I'll be frank, a lot of the parents don't like Parent Square. That came up as, so yes, an easy tool for us. And honestly, many years ago, those of you that were teachers remember when SEED came out and everybody said, I'm going to make a goal and I'm going to send out newsletters. And every teacher sent out newsletters and parents got 73 newsletters every week. And it became this white noise. We're going to look at Parent Square and they have questions. We're going to do some sessions and have these conversations with parents. How can we better utilize it? there's some tools in there that are really powerful to gather information from parents, whether it's polling, or how do we better manage the, they came up, why are there district flyers? And they're all about the elementary school. We need more flyers from the high school. And so that, like, some of these questions are like, oh, it's not as engaging. And we continue to talk about what does parent involvement mean. That actually came up at the school climate committee. One of the kids said, Mr. Belano, what does parent involvement mean at the high school? And I said, well, what would you want it to be? And he looked at me and went, not much, right? So that's something to be mindful of too, like us as parents and being a parent of a high schooler. I get it. I want to be involved. That's the last thing my kid wants is me involved. It's bad enough when he comes to the homecoming dance at Brookfield High School and his father is there for that. That was fun. But there's enough, there's a level of what does parent involvement look like or family involvement look like? What do students want from their parents to be involved? And how do we find that balance, right? So we're going to continue to investigate that. But at the end of the semester, I think this is a big piece too, because we talked about this. We're going to give student surveys about engagement, right? And what it was like. What are some helpful strategies? We're not always looking for things. We're not trying to catch anybody in doing something incorrectly, but what worked for you? What didn't work for you? Think of that college model, right? For those of you that take in college classes, the end of the semester, you take a survey where you talk about, you kind of rate the professor. We're not looking to rate teachers. I'm not doing that. I know the union's not here. I'm not looking to rate teachers. Anonymous surveys about what worked well in the moment, in that class for you, that we can then say, okay, let's build on that. So how do we, that's getting students engaged. And then our ILT Connections program, I had some conversations, and Emily, you'll understand this. Like, it's been a lot of Mr. Belanda telling us a lot of stuff. We need to do more team building. So there's going to be some interesting things coming up in the next couple weeks that you'll see beyond the gingerbread houses that we're doing. We're also doing a couple other competitions. So it's going to be, there'll be more team building activities, but that has been a great way to connect students and teachers together, and having parents have the opportunity to go to ILT first this year at Open House. I got some positive feedback about that because they had never met the ILT teacher that their kid had for 4 years or was going to have for 4 years. So we tried that to try to make some more connections and engagement. So that's a lot. It was definitely less than Dean, but happy to answer any questions. And obviously there'll be more details in the plan itself when it comes out.
I just have the same question that I asked the others, but
Sure.
So how, looking at the school, the achievement, sort of the MTSS and any other data that you use, how are you personally, sort of overseeing, that data is being looked at routinely?
Yeah, so that's the insurance. That's the great part about having that admin CLT time with my admins, right? So I'm working with them, and it's going to be, we'll talk about in terms of we start developing goals, right, for the school year. Each individual administrator has to develop goals, and that's a data point that we can't ignore. We have to have a goal about how do we improve that, right?
Okay.
And so, and having that structure and that time, we've started looking with the CAPE committee at AP scores and final exam data and those sorts of things. We're going to be able to look at that even more now because final exams, while not a popular thing for everybody, is going to be anybody but only seniors are going to be exempt. We'll have more and more data points. We're working to become more data literate with what that actually means. And my admins also, so you also know, go out to the CLT. So it's important that CLTs or PLCs have some level of autonomy to kind of decide what they want to do. But the presence of the administrator, not there the whole time, not there as like big brother over to look over what you're doing, but also provide input, insight, ask questions, and give guidance as to where we should go next or take a look at this. That's an active part of what our structure is. And so we'll see pretty quickly a PSAT when that comes out. I mean, we took it today. We'll see. I think it's 3 weeks I get the data back. So it's going to be relatively quick to see, and I'll be able to compare those 9th and 10th and 11th grade scores with what they got in the previous year. And so that'll be it'll be a data team walkthrough and see what we're going to do. There's a tuning protocol to look at that stuff, and we will do that. And then continue. Yeah, we could say, yes, I know the math scores went down in the state. That's an easy one to say. But our team does take it quite personally when that happens. You can see that happen. So we have a plan though. We're moving forward with that. And MTSS, continues to be, we don't have the ability to always pull kids out because of the structure of a high school schedule. We do have some quote unquote opportunities for that to happen with our interventionists. We only have one math interventionist. We have 2 reading interventionists, so it's a little easier on the reading side, easier only in terms of scheduling, not easier in terms of the work, I will say. But it's a little more challenging on the math side because we also use them as co-teachers in the classroom. So, but we are working to find ways to creatively get students that additional intervention they may need, working around their study halls, because we do have intervention blocks of classes scheduled throughout the course of the day. So you may be in study hall, as Dean said, and not love the fact you're going to miss UNH, but we're going to pull you and put you in there for a little bit, figure that out.
Thanks.
And I was just going to say thank you for making, putting the plan together to really shore up Tier 1 across the board, because with our high school students, we know how hard it is to service them on Tier 2 and Tier 3. I mean, they don't want to be pulled out. It's
Right.
a lot easier to provide interventions, for our younger students and even our middle school students. So I think, if we know where every student is, Tier 1, it's going
Right.
to be easier to know who we have to service Tier 2.
Exactly. We can ensure that
So-
level playing field for everybody that gets the same thing, and then those kids that you said kind of
so
bubble
thank
up.
you for looking at that, because I think, at the high school level, we kind of, or in high school, but
Yeah.
those data points.
I think it's that theme of that balance across, like how
Yeah.
much we want to pull back, we still have to be parents,
I
we
know.
still have to do this, we still, it's definitely a balancing act.
I have 2 things.
Yep.
Was there any conversation around like consistency in grading or grading practices? I was hoping to see something on that.
Yeah, so consistency and grade, that's been a lot of conversations about. Each department has general, so within a CLT, let's say, so a group of 3 teachers, they're going to have, they're going to give similar assignments, they're going to give common assessments. What it comes down to is how somebody actually grades something. You will see, whether it's total points, whether it's on a rubric, there are a lot of different ways that they will choose to assess and put grades in. But that is a constant conversation as to how best align this so that teachers still have some level of autonomy to grade things the way that they see appropriate, but also have an experience that matches from teacher to teacher. It'll never be exactly the same. We know that, because the instructional experience for an individual teacher is going to bring their personal perspective into it. But the end result, the grading, if we're grading them if we're giving them the same assignments, we don't want an English 2 class, right, of the same level, one teacher given 15 to 16 assignments a quarter, and another person giving 5. That is not an equitable, so we've worked that's the starting point to make sure, and we're there now where we're, let's say, between different courses of the same level, they're giving the same assignments, the same types of things because they're collaborating. The next part is kind of that tuning protocol. We can get to that through CLTs, but there hasn't been a universal, this is how we're all going to grade conversation. We have them in bits and pieces as things come up, but there is always discrepancy, unfortunately, across the board with different teachers, between the different teachers and how they assess things. It is something that certainly can be addressed. I have to go back to look at my full, I don't remember if it was the grading policies was actually in my school improvement plan, but it's something I can look back at.
And then that ties in obviously to like midterms and finals, right?
Right.
So when we looked at that data, right, I think that was a concern that came up.
Mhm.
Well, are they having shared experiences as far as assessment, the
Mhm.
midterm goes, or the final exam? Does it look the same? And depending on the teacher, that's
Yeah, they're generally, in a course, the exams are going to be the same. What does happen sometimes, depending on pacing, depending on, you may have a teacher who's out for whatever reason, things do happen, and you may have to compact things. So we have seen on occasion where there may be a section that may not be assessed on that midterm, that the other sections, that does occur. How do we figure that out to make sure that everybody does get as close to the same common experience as possible?
Mhm.
Because then we can actually, as you said, we can actually look at those grades and it means more. Right? All the other stuff that's built into a grade, like I tried that a couple years ago, it's always in the back of my mind, all the extra stuff. Here's the actual mastery, here's the skills and knowledge of how many are you getting points for, it's not my favorite thing, but you handed in your lab safety contract. Here's 5 points. That is a habit of work That is not an actual skill in science, right? It is so separating out habits of work and actual skills. We definitely have improved from when I started, because it was like extra credit for everything. But there are still pockets that we absolutely need to work on to determine between habits of work and actual skill of mastery of content.
I want to be cognizant of how much time we're spending on
Sure.
this particular agenda item, and I know that's because you guys have been very used to giving us like tons and tons of information. But I think just for the sake of just efficiency in the meeting, I think if there's any more sort of operational type questions, we compile them, we can send them to Wendy, and then certainly you
Happy
can
to do
provide
that.
like a really thorough response.
Absolutely.
So,
Yep.
But thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I don't have a question. I just
Yeah.
want to make a quick comment. The one little other thing I thought I'd see is like a shout out to like vertical alignment, right? That's for all the 3 buildings. That's something I've brought up in the past. You know, our middle school students being ready for high school and having those shared experiences. So that's something that I'd like to see maybe a follow up on. Is that vertical alignment between buildings and our students having the consistency between buildings.
Yeah, I think if anybody has those, we'll compile those.
Okay.
All right, let's move on to the 26-27 budget assumptions and priorities.
Okay, so as part of our, thank you. Thank you. As part of the annual budget process, we start every year by reflecting on strategic planning, our vision and mission, and we form priorities and assumptions. I did shift the way this looks a little bit. I tried to condense it. It's been my practice in other districts that the budget priorities and assumptions and/or challenges are bigger buckets that are broader and encompass a variety of topics, which they're listed here. I can touch on them briefly. And then as we unfold the budget meetings, we might discover that there is a need for an additional, I'm making this up, I don't know, an additional person in this department. And so that would probably be justified under the student support bucket, right? So if you will, our priorities, number one, the cornerstone priority of any district needs to be learner growth and success, right? So that insurance of rigorous learning for all students, knowing where each student is so that we can move them forward from where they are to where they need to be next in that continuum. That is our priority. And all of our budget decisions need to support that. And so that's one of them. Safety and security is another top priority for me. Those are my 2 cornerstone priorities. You know, we have a large focus over the next few years on building that compassionate culture, that culture of kindness and respect and restorative justice. All of those pieces that the state of Connecticut has supported will show up in some way, shape, or fashion in most school districts' budget priorities. Again, student support, so the funding for a variety of special needs, not just special education, but individual needs that learners have. That's a student support bucket. And maintaining our educational programs. So it's a priority for me as your superintendent to maintain what we have and still continue to grow, right? So that's another priority. We have we want to maintain our 4 Cs. We want to, you know, if we have to make a cut somewhere, we want to invest in another area. So we want to maintain. The budget assumptions are things that you're very commonly familiar with. We are going to assume inflation exists. We are going to assume, unfortunately, that health costs will escalate. We built in, you know, Casey and I met with the first selectman this week. We meet weekly, and decided to build in a 7.7% increase in medical premiums. So we will build that in, as will the town, and, you know, we will experience that growth or decline together. So we will assume in our budget that we will have contractual obligations. We have already a lot of data. We still have 1 bargaining unit that is still in the process. We are anticipating that will be solidified so that we can get a contractual obligation percentage to work with within the next few weeks. We assume that operating costs are probably going to increase, you know, whether it's purchasing goods or transportation. Staffing, we don't have an assumption that it's going to increase. We have an assumption that it might need to be flexible based on needs of enrollment and or student needs Again, we have assumptions that our capital plan would be hopefully funded. We have assumptions that our grants, I point that out, our title grants are an assumption that we will get them. We will get them this year. But we are going to build next year's budget on the assumption that we will be awarded those title grants. There is never a guarantee because they're grants. So that's the way I look at priorities and assumptions, and then we build our budget around that, and these would be some of the foremost slides perhaps in our presentation for ourselves, our community, and our town. But I'm interested in your feedback if you see priorities or assumptions that maybe aren't here or something that you don't know if it fits somewhere else. I'm definitely welcome to that discussion.
I actually really liked how you explained
Thank you.
that. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
I was just gonna say, I appreciate the pared down, sort of clear layout of this. I think it's really easy to see where everything aligns, so thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, then if there's no other comments, we'll move on. We don't have any old business. Up next is public comment. I saw you looking for the sheets. There's only 2 members of the public here. I'm just gonna sort of ask board members, if anybody wants to make a public comment, would you guys be okay with that? Yeah? Okay. Does anybody from the public want to speak? You're good? All right. Well, then we'll move on to 3 main points.
Yes, so I have the 3 main points as the superintendent search update, the student achievement report, and the school improvement plans.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, great.
All right. So then, upcoming events.
Okay, CLES. Ongoing from now until the 24th is the book fair. The 22nd, 23rd, and 24th are parent-teacher conferences, and all of those days are early dismissal for CLES. Now through October 31st is the Candlewood Craze, which is the PTO fall fundraiser. The 31st is the Candlewood Craze event if the goals are met. So parents are encouraged to set up a profile for their child and help meet the fundraising goals for the school. 10:30 is October 30th is the Paws Assembly and Cubs Club meeting, and November 3rd is the kindergarten field trip to the Ridgefield Playhouse. For Wisconsin, November 3rd through 7th is the Scholastic Book Fair. November 5th and 6th are parent-teacher conferences, and so those are half days for WMS students. They're also the BHS parent-teacher conferences, so they're also half days for BHS. Thursday, November 13th is the Wisconsin Student Showcase, 6 to 8 p.m. here at the BHS Auditorium. And then for Brookfield High School, Sunday, October 26th is 3 p.m. is the Booster Club's Harlem Wizards basketball event. Tickets are on sale now online. Wednesday, November 5th and 6th, parent-teacher conferences, half day for students. And November 10th is the NHS Blood Drive. District-wide, dates to note that are off for students: November 4th, which is also Election Day, November 27th and 28th, which is Thanksgiving and the Friday after. November 26th, which is the Wednesday, is a half day for all students.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, then that is the end of our agenda. So without objection, we will adjourn at 9:18.